But without further delay, we'll start with the next session, which is around the theme of creating an enabling ecosystem for women leaders at the grassroots. And we have Dr. Farahdibha, who will be moderating this session. She's the co-chair for the W20 Task Force on Grassroots Leadership. Over to you.
Thank you so much. I know this is a crucial time because you all just have lunch, and I know that it's a great lunch, right? So everybody, so bear with me, yeah? All right. Thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Farahdibha Tenrilemba. I am representing Indonesia delegates. Last year, I was in Dari 3 position, which is hush, because last year was Indonesia presidency. And I am from KOANI. KOANI is the National Women Council of Indonesia, where we got appointed as committee of W20, where Ibu Uli Silalahi is our chair, and she is also coming here. I also the co-chair for Grassroots Leadership Task Force, which is so glad it's such a continuity of last year communique, where the communique itself, 2022, we have 5 party issues that 3 of them continued in today's in W20 23 India presidency. And I will tell you the achievement of last year presidency. We, all delegates, managed to finish the communique 10 days prior to summit, and that is a big achievement for W20. So big round of applause to all delegates, which we hope that it will continue to do so this year. This is our communique and the Toba track, which we will distribute to you in the delegates meeting tomorrow. The Toba track that Elena also mentioned in her presentations, that this is actually the action plan, the annex of the communique, where can be the guidance for all of us in doing what we are doing right now from our organizations, each organizations that we are heading. So I'm not going to take more further time because we only have 60 minutes with 6 marvelous panelists of this session 3. This panel will talking about creating an enabling ecosystem for women leaders at the grassroots. And as you know, grassroots women is pretty much huge number, not only in Indonesia, but also specifically in India. According to a report by United Nations Development Program, women's participation in grassroots level leadership is crucial for achieving sustainable development goals. Women's participation in local governance can lead to better decision making, more effective policies, and more equitable outcomes. However, women continue to face significant challenges in accessing and participating in political and public leadership at the grassroots level. I will have 6 panelists to my right, so it's sequences, yay. Professor Shamika Ravi, she is a member Economic Advisory Council to Prime Minister, Government of India, and also W20 delegate. And then also the next one, Bharati Ghosh, former Indian Police Service, former UN and grassroots political leader of India, and also W20 delegate and chair of Task Force on Grassroots Leadership. We will lead the task force on the grassroots leadership. And then the next lady beside me, Sudhaben Patel. She is the Vice-Chairperson, Valsad District Cooperative, Milk Producer Union Limited-Vasudhara Dairy, Valsad, India. To my left, she has the same name with me, bear in mind, ladies, Farah, Arabe, co-president of Harvard Kennedy School's Women Network and founder itotheN. You see double Farah? Yeah? The next is Miss Sibulele Poswayo, the gender specialist, Border Rural Committee, South Africa W20 Delegate. And last but not least, Miss Rimjhim Gour, the grassroots researcher, founder and director, Sapiens Research and Analysis, and founder and director of GRAMYA. You see? So this panel, I would like to ask all my panelists to have 6 minutes. And after that, if we still have time, then I will ask audience for burning questions. All right, over to you, Shamika ji.
Thank you, Farah. Namaskar, everyone. Let me first start out by sensitizing you to, in a democratic setup, why grassroots leaders matter so much for us. Because unlike many countries where we started with reservation of leaders in the parliament, India's approach to women's representation has really been a bottoms-up. We started by first allocating 30% of all panchayat, which is our most grassroots or the most decentralized local level of government. 30% of these were earmarked for women. So we started from that level. Very quickly, we went on to reserve 50% of all panchayats for women. Now, obviously, the question that people ask repeatedly, and I know many women ask of ourselves as well, does it make a difference? Are these mostly proxy candidates, right? Now, we have done extensive work over the last 25 years, which have gone on to show that, first of all, that when you have women at the local level as leaders, the nature of political representation and the kind of public goods that are made available actually vary. Women representation in the form of political leadership actually leads to catering to those public goods which matter to women. So access to drinking water, access to clean energy, safety. So there is a difference between men and women as leaders when it comes to provision of public goods, which is the biggest task for any political leader in a democracy. That's story number one. Story number two really comes from a natural experiment. That do women really want very different things from men? Right? In a democracy, we all vote and everyone has one vote. But do women fundamentally want something other than what the men want? And there is a very nice experiment, a natural experiment that emerged out of one of our biggest states called Bihar. And that study really correlates, in fact, there is a causal link to it, that when more men came out and voted, they tend to vote for status quo. But when more women came out and voted, they voted for change. So more women coming out and voting is very strongly and negatively correlated with re-election of local candidates if they are not very good, meaning criminal charges, etc., etc., etc. So women indeed are agents of change even as voters. And the reason I'm telling you this story is because India is undergoing what we call a silent revolution. You don't hear about this story a lot, but this is very well borne in the data for the last 20 years. Many more women are coming out and voting. The women are voting differently from the men. And when they are electing women leaders, the women leaders are fundamentally providing very different kinds of public goods. So all those three things together means political leadership has to cater to women. Let me also tell you about a ground reality in India today. Because the women have become such a large political force, no political party or leader can truly ignore women votes. So almost all political parties now have very progressive policies that they are actively implementing, including constitutions within the party. Political parties also want more women leaders within the party. So they are now giving quotas, reservations, etc. It started with South Africa, but now it's a very common thing in Indian political parties. That is number one. And number two, no political party can overlook the needs of the women. So you know that India has adopted a lot of schemes which did not start out as being women-centric, but in effect they have been. The large Swachh Bharat, which is the toilet scheme. The fact that India built 100 million toilets within the first 2 years of Prime Minister Modi's administration is a gendered policy. The fact that not having access to toilets fundamentally affected the women much more than the men has repeatedly been shown, not just in outcomes of elections. Women are overwhelmingly voting for incumbent government, but it is reflected in the data very strongly. The LPG, giving LPG, because indoor pollution is one of the biggest killers of women in India. And cooking is mostly, globally, it's a overwhelmingly a women's chore. And we are seeing that this transformation towards LPG, away from the fossil fuels or wood, etc., is leading to better health outcomes for women. So a lot of our large national policies are also catering to women's need. Another thing to bear in mind, India has seen a 16 times, mind you, not 16%, a 16x increase in number of women contesting local elections. So yes, you don't see them in the parliament in numbers that you would like to. You don't see them in the assemblies at the numbers you would like to, but they are contesting elections. And that is always the first step to achieving women's. Have a very large cadre of ASHA workers. ASHA workers are the backbone of our public health system. So these are the ladies who go house to house, checking on children, giving immunization, checking women, checking for malnutrition, checking for high-risk pregnancies, etc. Today, they are a force of nature. In fact, the United Nations has called them the change agents of the century. So they are overwhelmingly a force of nature. The second, and this will be my last point, is also on the financial inclusion side. South Asia, beginning with Bangladesh and southern part of India, has had some of the most successful financial inclusion experimentation from the microfinance space. Today, we are seeing a major explosion of that beyond small experiment. We have a massive policy push to improve and escalate the self-help group movement that we had formerly, which stayed fragmented. Now there's an effort to make it a large national movement. The banking correspondents, who are correspondents who go house to house, basically telling you how to do financial transactions, because now banking transaction and digitization has made it quite easy for people to do. These are all helping women access a lot of financial instruments other than loans. They're helping them save in safe ways. They're helping them file claims when they are insured. A lot of problem with financial inclusion, and particularly insurance, is not that people don't have coverage. The problem is that they have the coverage, but they don't know how to file claims. And these banking correspondent and the last mile is being met by a lot of these public servants that we have within the cadre. So I'll stop with that. I'm very happy to take questions on some of these things. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Shamika ji, can I ask you a little bit? So how many women in politics then, the quotas? Have India also have the quotas for women in parliament, in government?
Well, we don't have a quota in the parliament yet. In fact, we have had a bill in our national parliament for the last 20 years. And I think this is where you have to accept the fact that a large plural democracy, it is very difficult to push through many policies, however progressive it might be. We have several political parties that are opposed to it. The sitting party, the sitting government, is one of the promoters. And in fact, this is the only political party which has almost 30% of its internal members as women. And it comes closest to the constitution of the party. But we do have, again, at the local level, it's about 50%.
That's great then, because we need to have more women in both in executive and legislative levels. Thank you so much, Shamika ji. Then I'll move up to Bharati ji. You have the floor, and you also will have PowerPoint presentations. 6 minutes is yours.
Let me come closer to the crowd. Namaste. All these beautiful ladies and strong men here. I would start from an ancient Vedic saying, Yatra nari astu pujyante ramante tatra devata, which means wherever women are worshipped, wherever they have dignity of life, there the world becomes a better place to live in. There is development, there is peace. In India, we already had this respect embedded in our culture. But from 2014, a new sense of respect for women has become the foundation of all national schemes and programs that the central government has undertaken. The name of that force, or the name of the man, is Prime Minister Modi. It's a Modi force, it's a Modi miracle. One single man trying everything in his power to bring in a new sense of respect for women, to make respect for women a legitimate right in the society, and the ordinary woman, very ordinary woman's right to have respect from all sections of the society is being upheld and recognized by the central government. Prime Minister Modi's quest to raise consciousness in the society for respect to women, his constant endeavor to create roadmaps to remove gender inequality from different parts of the society, and his redefinition of development of women to women-led development has in turn removed most of the challenges that women and girls face in their environment, and this in turn has created ease of life for women and girls and enabled them to pursue their dreams, to follow their passion, to make a profession out of their passion. And in this way, entitlements of women have become their empowerments, and development of women today in India is mostly women-led development. These goals of women empowerment, these goals of women-led development are today the hardest pillars of itotheN, which means a self-sufficient India. And these goals have created opportunities for the ordinary women to emerge out of their ordinariness and to become extraordinary in terms of professionalism, in terms of education, in terms of physical and mental health, and to contribute to Atmanirbhar Bharat, which is the self-sufficient India. And in this Abhijan India, which is a huge movement, the ordinary woman becomes the leading force in the development trajectory. Today, in this decadal growth of women from 2014, we have seen multidimensional, we have seen multifaceted, we have seen very refined, modern, yet very delicate growth. Shamika ji was speaking of Swachh Bharat program. I would not overlap. Only I would say this, that when this program came in to free India from open defecation, and the program was to construct 90 million toilets in rural economy, it was understood by the central government that this needs a sustained behavioral change of the community, and only women can drive the change and bring about the long-lasting change. And so, this program emphasized on strengthening the role of women and building indigenous capacity. So women were involved not only in the planning and implementation stage of sanitation interventions, they also occupied very high leadership positions in the Swachh Bharat Gramin, which means village committees and institutions. Today, you will be very proud and happy to know that 1 million Satyagrahis, 1 million grassroots leaders are down there in India at the ground root level, and they have pushed hard to make India free from open defecation. I would like to show you the first slide of Uttara Thakur. This grassroots leader, Uttara Thakur, is from Chhattisgarh. She is a differently abled woman, somebody who lost her legs during the polio. In spite of her hardships, she rose to the level of the Sarpanch, which is the village head. And with her indomitable courage and with her contagious spirit, she mobilized the whole village. She moved door to door and made her village, Chicha, free of open defecation. My salute to grassroots leader Uttara Thakur. You'll also be surprised to know that in Jharkhand, there was indigenous capacity building training, and women masons, the grassroots leaders, they built 1,100,000 toilets to make Jharkhand free from open defecation. Previously, our Indian friend Prachi was speaking about a girl who could not follow her education, who could not pursue her education because she had to collect water from faraway places. I was hearing that, and I would like to speak about Jal Jeevan Mission, that is bringing tap water to the rural households. Nal se jal, har ghar jal, which means every rural household would have tap water. The provision of drinking water by the central government not only liberated women from their severe hardship, which is involved in the collection of water from faraway places, but also water entitlement became empowerment, because not only 110 million rural households received tap water, but also 1.6 million, I repeat my friends, 1.6 million rural women were trained with field testing kits, and they are now occupied in quality control, surveillance activities, and grassroots leadership at the village-rural level. I would now like to go on to the PowerPoint presentation. The schemes are many because the dream is very huge. Women emancipation, women empowerment, women-led development, and to free India from the gender inequality. And today, I can safely say, very proudly say, that under the Narendra Modi government, the call for no discrimination, the call for removal of gender inequality, it was a call of yesterday. Today, women are emerging more equals. As we go off to the PowerPoint presentation, I will request you that because of shortage of time, I'll not be able to go through the whole PowerPoint. I'll just touch on the few very significant points. Any questions? I'm around. One of the first things that I would like to, please go on to the first slide, please. The first one obviously had, it's not here, but I'll talk about it. It's Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, launched by the Prime Minister in 2015 in order to secure the survival and protection of the girl child, her growth and participation at every stage of her life. And complementing that is a Sukanya Samriddhi project in which a certain amount of money is kept with the government in a scheme called Sukanya Samriddhi, earning higher rates of interest than fixed deposit, but eligible for tax deductions. And when the girl child becomes mature enough, the entire amount, including the accumulated interest, is given to the child so that she can take her independent decisions. We also have one-stop shop or Sakhi. Approximately 1,000 one-stop shops for attending to victims of violence, both in public and private space, have been opened up in different parts of the country, providing legal aid, medical aid, and shelter homes to victims of violence in all spaces, public and private. And you'll be very happy and proud to know that the government is now considering opening up one-stop shop or Shakhi in 9 countries overseas, including Australia, Canada, Singapore, Oman, Kuwait, Qatar, UAE, and Saudi Arabia. Of course, in the PPT, you see Ujawala, which is to prevent trafficking. It also arranges shelter homes. Mahila Police Volunteers as a police public interface. Mahila e-Heart Mission, which to facilitate entrepreneurship opportunities. Can you move the slide, please? Mahila Shakti Kendra, which was introduced so that women can have all facilities, including healthcare, quality education, etc., etc. Swadhar Griho, another project of the central government for shelter, food, clothing of the women. Women Entrepreneurship Fund Scheme to help women entrepreneurs in different business ventures. Please go on. This is very important. You see, women entrepreneurs is round about 18% of the total entrepreneurs in India. And the quantum, the percentage gradually increases from 1998 till date. In terms of entrepreneurship, in terms of manufacturing, in terms of trade, and also in terms of social service, women are moving up the ladder. Next slide, please. Cooperatives, very, very important. 1 million women are now into women cooperatives, and the number of women cooperatives is gradually increasing day by day. We are hopeful that with all your good wishes, we are going to go straight up to the top of the ladder. Sorry. Yeah. This is very important. My friend Shamika ji was speaking about women empowerment, and my boss over here was asking questions about how much we are in the, power sector. Women in the panchayat, as you know, Panchayat Raj is the local self-government of villages in the rural village. And over there, as you see, 57% of women leaders in gram panchayats, village panchayats. In block panchayats, 40% of women govern the rural development. And the percentage in district panchayats, Jilla panchayats, is 43%. We can now say that women are, governing the rural development as much as men.
Bharati ji, the 6 minutes is
30 seconds more.
Okay.
In the parliament, we are progressing. In Lok Sabha, we are 78 seats out of 542. In defense and police service, also you see a growth. I will not continue. I'll stop over here with only one thing I'll say, that Narendra Modi government has made us all proud. But we know that there are many challenges and we have a long way to go. I'll only stop by saying that the woods are lovely, dark and deep, but this government has promises to keep, and many more miles before we go to sleep, and many more miles before we go to sleep. I'm there for questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bharati ji. Let me continue first to my next panelist, Sudhaben Sureshbhai Patel, the Valsad District Cooperative Milk Producers Union Limited, which having turnover of 22,000 million rupees. Sudhaben will deliver in local language, which later will be translated. Go ahead. The time is yours.
સૌને મારા જય શ્રી કૃષ્ણ. મારું નામ સુધાબેન પટેલ છે. હું ગુજરાતની અમૂલ ડેરીની વસુધરા ડેરીમાંથી આવું છું. હું વસુધરા ડેરીની વાઇસ ચેરમેન પદ ધરાવું છું. દૂધના ધંધા સાથે હું સમાવેશ કરેલ છે મારો. મારી પાસે મારા લગ્ન થયા બાદ એક ગાયથી મેં શરૂઆત કરેલી. આજે મારી પાસે 8 ગાયો છે અને જે ગાયો છે એમની વાછરડી આવે એમને મેં યોજનામાં જોડેલ છે. 29 જેટલી વાછરડીઓ મેં વાછરડી ઉછેર યોજનામાં જોડેલ છે. તેમાંથી 24 જેટલી ગાયો વાછરડી મેં ગાયો બનાવીને વેચાણ કરેલ છે અને દૂધના ધંધાથી હું પગભર બની છું. મારા દીકરાને મેં ઓટોમોબાઈલ એની પદવી પ્રાપ્ત કરાવેલ છે અને એ મેનેજરની પોસ્ટ પર છે. ત્યારબાદ મેં મારા અંગત કામો ઘણા બધા કરેલ છે. મારા પતિદેવને મેં જેસીબી લેવા માટે 2 લાખ રૂપિયાની મદદ પણ કરેલ છે. મેં મારા પોતાના અંગત શોખ માટે સોનાના ગહેણાઓ પણ લીધેલા છે. ગાયો ને બેસવા માટે રબરમેટ સીટો પણ લગાવેલ છે, મિલ્કિંગ મશીન પણ વસાવેલ છે, ચાપ કતર મશીન પણ વસાવેલ છે. મેં વિવિધ કામો દૂધ ઉત્પાદનના ક્ષેત્રે કરેલ છે અને મેં મારા સંઘમાં પણ આર્થિક પગભર બની છું. મારો છોકરો અને હું બંને પોસ્ટ ગ્રેજ્યુએટ છે. મારું પશુપાલન ફાર્મ જોઈ ને મારી બીજી બહેનોને પણ પશુપાલન ફાર્મ બનાવી આપેલ છે. મેં જ્યારે ધંધો ચાલુ કર્યો ત્યારે પુરુષોની મંડળી હતી, જેમના અંદરના ઝઘડાને લીધે બંધ થઈ, જેના લીધે બહેનોને દૂધ નિકાલ કરવાની તકલીફ પડતી અને ગામથી 4 કિલોમીટર દૂર જવું પડતું હતું. આ પ્રોબ્લેમ દૂર કરવા મેં અમૂલ વસુધરા ડેરીનો સંપર્ક કર્યો અને તેમની મદદથી મહિલા મંડળી બનાવી. વલસાડ ડેરીની કુલ 1126 મંડળીઓ છે, તેમાંથી મહિલાઓ 936 મંડળી સંચાલિત છે. મારા ગામની મહિલાઓએ સર્વાનુમતે મંડળીની ચેરમેન બનાવી અને અમારી મંડળીની શરૂઆત 80 લીટરથી કરી ધીમે ધીમે ઘણા બધા બહેનો અમારી સાથે જોડાયા અને આજે અમારે દૂધ મંડળીમાં 1100 લીટર દૂધ સંપાદન કરીએ છીએ. અમારી દૂધ મંડળીનું પોતાનું મકાન છે. મકાનમાં આધુનિક બીએમસી પણ મૂકેલ છે, ઓટોમેટિક મિલ્ક સિસ્ટમ પણ છે. અમારી મંડળી જોઈ બીજા ગામની બહેનો પણ મારી પાસે આવી અને મેં તેમને મહિલા મંડળી બનાવવામાં મદદ કરી. આ બધી બહેનોએ મને વસુધરા ડેરીની ડિરેક્ટર તરીકે ચૂંટી, જેનું ટર્નઓવર રૂપિયા 2230 કરોડ કરતાં પણ વધારે છે. મેં અમારી બહેનોએ 34,000 ગોબર ગેસ બનાવ્યા છે, 5,000 સેલ્ફ હેલ્પ ગ્રુપો, તેમાં 95,000 મહિલાઓનો સમાવેશ કરેલ છે. મેં મારા પોતાના ગામમાં પણ 23 ગ્રુપો બનાવેલા છે, તેમાં 19 મહિલાઓના ગ્રુપો છે અને 4 બાળકોના છે. ટોટલ 135 કરોડ રૂપિયા મારા પોતાનું અંગત ગામનો ભંડોળ ભેગો કરેલો છે. મને સંઘને આ બધા પ્રોગ્રામમાં બોલાવવામાં આવે છે, જેનો મને આનંદ છે, ગર્વ છે. અમારા ગામડાઓ અને બહેનો અમૂલ સહકારી ડેરીથી સમૃદ્ધ બને એવી જ અભ્યર્થના સૌને મારા જય શ્રી કૃષ્ણ અસ્તુ. ભારત માતા કી જય. ગાય માતાની જય. ગાય માતા થકી જ હું અહીંયા આવી છું. અસ્તુ.
PPT please. I'll just translate whatever Sudhaben Patel has said quickly in 2 minutes. Just PPT please. So she started her career from just having one small calf. She reared it, raised it to 8 cows. Now she is pouring around 35 liters of milk every day into the society. But that is just beginning of her business after her marriage. Post, she slowly gathered all the women, because in her village, men were running the village dairy cooperative society. Because of the mismanagement, fight among the men, society was stopped. No, women had to go around 4 kilometers. They had to walk at that distance to pour the milk. Their business were in utter dismay. So she took the leadership, gathered the women. With help of Vasudhara Dairy and Amul, she organized their Women Village Dairy Cooperative Society in her village, and it started with 80 liters of milk on the first day. Now they are procuring 1,100 liters of milk. Now they have got their own building, own bulk milk cooler, own automatic milk collection system, everything at the village level. She didn't stop at that. She helped other women of surrounding villages to form the Village Dairy Cooperative Society, and then later on, they elected her unanimously, unopposed, to become the director of the Valsad dairy, having turnover of 22,000 million rupees. She is now vice chairman of that dairy since last 8 years. Okay, and she is leading. Language is not a barrier for anyone. She is just a graduate. Okay, that also she continued on some correspondence courses and others, but she is now a women leader, well-known women leader, and she is proud of that. That's what she said. Another thing, for say climate, she has already installed biogas unit at her home. There are 35,000 such units. Like there was another point regarding microfinance. Okay, women were having problems. Then she started with small self-help groups, collecting 10 rupees to 100 rupees in a month. Right now they have got more than 90,000 such 95,000 women who are participating in such self-help groups, having 1,580 million rupees by women self-help groups. So this is what, when a woman comes to the forefront, she can do. That's a shining example of all the criteria which we are looking for, whether grassroots leadership or women-led development or climate change or education and skill development. So these are the, and Amul has got more than such 1.2 million women for that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Impressive how having turned over for 22,000 million rupees. Congratulations and keep up the good work. So I'm going to have Farah Arabe to present her presentation, and this is going to be interesting. Mothers as change makers of the world, and hoping that the PowerPoint is the correct one because there is a little bit changing. So Farah, you have 6 minutes. Yes.
Let me see if is this working? Yes. So a premise question of this session panel is, what are women doing at the grassroots level that could possibly have a big impact, positive impact in the world? And the answer that I would like to propose is mothering and caregiving. Of course, we cannot do it alone, and our societies need to value it more highly, but mothers are change makers of the world. I don't know if that. There we go. Yeah.
Yes. This is the correct one, right?
Yes, that is the correct one. Okay. There we go. All right. Sorry. Yes. But it's not moving forward. Thank you.
Next slide, please.
Yeah, I mean, I can.
Do you mind helping? Next slide, please. Yeah. Go on.
Okay, thank you. So according to the latest research in neurobiology, the foundations for successful societies, like, for example, academic achievement, economic productivity, responsible citizenship, thank you very much, lifelong health, strong communities, and even the ability to be the parent to the next generation start in early childhood. So to the extent that women are taking care of the development of their children in their earliest years, they are being strong and important contributors to global development outcomes. So why are the early years so important? And it's because neuroplasticity is at its highest the younger that we are. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to adapt to the environment and to respond to the environment. And in our earliest years, our brains are most optimally formed to assimilate the environmental input. Now, what does the environment actually mean to an infant, right? And the environment means the relationship that the infant has with his closest caregiver or the most important adult in their life. Babies are born, actually, wired to have reciprocal, mutually interactive relationships. So they expect that if they cry, an adult is going to come and soothe them or comfort them. And they predict that if they laugh or coo, an adult is going to come and laugh and coo with them or cuddle them. And what happens in their brains is that if they get what the brain predicted, the brain learns that the world is a predictable and safe place. And if they don't get what their brain predicted, they learn that the world is an unpredictable and unsafe place. And when this becomes chronic and toxic, unfortunately, it triggers the nervous system of the babies, which can delay development in several parts of the brain, including language, cognitive, motor, social emotional. It can sow the seeds for antisocial behavior, even criminal behavior. And it can also sow the seeds for inflammation in the body, which is highly linked to hypertension and diabetes. There's a strong correlation between economic investment in the earliest years and strong national economies. This is the work of Professor James Heckman, Nobel Prize winner in economics. He's at the University of Chicago. He's one of the strongest proponents of investment in early childhood, and investment meaning investment in high quality nurturing care as a way to reduce inequality and increase economic productivity. There we go. There's also a strong connection between early childhood and future health outcomes. And there's a lot to discuss in this slide, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to highlight a very interesting thing. And that is that our bodies have biological memories. And what that means is that experience gets into our biology when we're children. There was an experiment conducted in 2018 that followed the lives of people from the time they were in the belly of their mothers to the time that they were in their 30s. And they found out that by the time they were adults, if the adults had been maltreated as children, they had a higher level of C-reactive protein, which is a biological marker for inflammation, and putting them at a higher risk for hypertension and diabetes. I won't explain right now why Harry Potter is there and Voldemort, but we can do that afterwards in the Q&A. But basically, there's also a very strong link between early childhood and future peace in societies. There are many studies that find that being exposed to neglect or abuse increase the odds of a future arrest as a youth by 53% and as an adult by 38%. There are also studies that show that experiencing physical, sexual, and emotional abuse and neglect substantially increase the odds of juveniles perpetrating aggressive antisocial acts. And this basically springs from the inability to relate to others. And a very interesting point here is that our ability to relate to others is extremely important, not only for more responsible and peaceful citizenship, but as we know from the latest study on happiness conducted at Harvard University, our relationships are really the most important factor in determining long-term happiness. It's not professional achievement, it's not money, it's not fame, it's relationships. So through mothering and caregiving, women are doing a very important job in promoting global sustainable development in economics, health, and peace. However, there are barriers, unfortunately, to being the leaders that we want to be as mothers and otherwise. And one of those barriers is that women are not compensated for their valuable work in caregiving and mothering. It is unfortunately seen in most parts of the world as low-wage, low-skilled, and unpaid labor. And if women would, could we go to the next slide, please? If women would actually be compensated for the work that they do, in 2019 alone, they would have earned $10.9 trillion. So talk about economic empowerment through mothering. Next one, please. But the impact of our mothering is not only on future returns, it is also on the present. Because as we provide free caregiving in our families, that it frees everyone else in our families to go and generate income and participate in the economy. And so basically our work, the work of caring and mothering, is the work that enables all other work. As Angela Garbs puts it, she says, women provide a huge unacknowledged subsidy to the smooth functioning of our economies, which would grind to a halt if women stopped doing this work. A second barrier that I would like to talk about, and of course, there are multiple barriers. I'm just focusing on three that personally resonate. The second barrier is that we are basically mothering and caregiving alone. We do, in many parts of the world, we just do not have the support of corporations in the private sector or the government. And so that really puts us in an emotionally difficult situation for women, because we cannot dedicate ourselves to anything else that nurture us, including income generation, if we are the only ones responsible for our children, right? And at the same time, we cannot be fully responsible for our children if we dedicate ourselves to anything else that's nurturing us, because then we would have to leave our kids in alternative caregiving arrangements that often don't make us feel good either. So either way, we do not have the emotional freedom to be the mothers and change makers that we want to be. And these are just some statistics on how little access there is to caregiving in low and middle income countries, despite the need for more of it. And I would like to highlight also that not having that emotional freedom, really what sacrifices is the emotional and mental well-being of women. The rate of depression globally for all adults is 5%. Postpartum depression globally is 20%. Postpartum depression in low and middle income countries goes up to 25%. And that's just another quote from the World Bank on how little childcare there is. So what we need is greater partnership, a shared responsibility from governments, from the private sector, from the entire society, acknowledging that this is not a favor that is being done to us if they help us be the mothers that we want to be. It's really a favor to society. And the third barrier I would like to talk about, of course, is cultural norms and how they can limit the freedom that women have in making their choices and being the mothers they want to be or not be, and how they want to do it. Unfortunately, there is a broad spectrum of societal impositions that range from patriarchy to religious. Even inadvertently, feminism can also push women into a specific decision when they are not free to actually choose what they want to choose. So we also need a social freedom in order to be the mothers and the leaders that we want to be. Yes. So just very quickly, the Harvard Kennedy School Women's Network is a nonprofit organization, evidently affiliated with the Harvard Kennedy School. We have the mission to connect, support, and amplify the work of HKS alumna, but we're embarking in efforts to go beyond the walls of HKS and include women who are doing the greater good, not necessarily affiliated with HKS. And we typically focus more on professional skills building and global policy discussions, but we're also initiating efforts to shine a light on the different types of leadership that women have at the grassroots, that it is not only about economics and politics, but that we are very socially empowered also as mothers. And itotheN is a small international development consulting firm that I founded a couple of years ago. We're doing really cool work trying to measure the quality of environments for children for their psychological development and partnering with great organizations to carry out that mission. I have to acknowledge, in the spirit of parenting, my parents, because the more I learn about brain science and life, the more I realize I couldn't have had better parents. My kids, that's Noor, who's 9, and Arush, who's 6. And obviously they are everything to me, but also I promised them that they would be on the presentation. And then I would also like to acknowledge my wonderful husband, who is taking care of the kids right now. And as you can see, he's Maharashtrian, which makes my presence here that much more meaningful and personal for me than it already is. So thank you. And then I just want to do, my last slide is just the QR codes and URLs for the Harvard Kennedy School Women's Network and for itotheN if you're interested in learning more. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Farah. I totally we practically can relate, because mother as the foundations of grassroots leadership, and I'm also a mother of 4. So yeah. So yeah, what we are doing right now is actually become their role model. And I know Sibulele also will mention about her daughter as her spirit of having this movement. So I'm heading to you, Sibulele. 6 minutes is yours.
Thank you so much, my sister. I would like to thank all my sisters for the deliberations and the contributions that you've given. We can almost go home after these four women have spoken. My name is Sibulele Poswayo. I'm from South Africa. My immediate language is isiXhosa. So if my surname is Gada, and when we deliberate in these spaces, I specifically today choose to engage in this space because really Women 20 is a space where we have the power. We are the power. And so in this session, I've entitled my presentation, Finding and Empowering Women by Embracing and Brightening Their Hidden Capacities. Just even before we start, I was telling a colleague just before lunch, here we are women colleagues who have been catered for. And we knew the numbers. The organizers knew how many of us would be here. So they've catered for each of our needs. But how many times, and this is what a hidden capacity is, this is what a woman's hidden capacity is. How many times do you have events? How many times do you have birthdays, funerals, where you don't know the numbers, but how many women or children or guests go hungry at that session? How do you cater? Do you not use that hidden capacity that is within you as that woman in that planning team to ensure that everything goes smoothly? So, next slide, please. So when we look at an ecosystem of leadership, I had two thoughts in my mind. And the first thought I had was women in the household. So if you're looking at grassroots leadership, which is what we're talking about, women in grassroots leadership, you look at women in leading their homes and in leading their communities. You look at women leading in business. You look at women leading in the workplace, in your surgery as a doctor, in the grassroots, in your office as a policymaker, in the grassroots. But within the ecosystem, you get a number of challenges that we can think of. The first challenge that one can think of is what Farah was talking about, the unpaid care work that's executed so swiftly and so amazingly by women at the grassroots level. Should then we not be thinking of finding and creating and nurturing leadership from those community-based organizations that are executing the unpaid care work? What about within the ecosystem, gender-based violence and femicide? How are we going to ensure that we here as women with a voice to create recommendations that we hope will find expression in the declarations of the leaders? How are we going to ensure that we take forth all types of gender-based violence, economic violence against the woman, that means lack of access to economic power? How are we going to ensure that those issues find expression? And then we have another thought that came through, which also talks about culture and tradition. How are we going to ensure that we address issues of patriarchy, issues of toxic masculinity? And so, next slide, please. And so when we look at these ecosystem, you've got your women in business, women in the home or community, women at work. How are we going to ensure that they access your means of production, your land tenure, land ownership, power, permission to occupy communal land, finance for business, your small business, SMME, small, medium, and metro enterprises? How are we going to ensure that we look at women leadership in position of power, from middle management, even taking it down to the girl child who is a leader in her soccer team at school? How are we going to ensure that within this ecosystem of leadership, we empower that woman who's a leader in her home, that woman who's a leader in her community? How are we going to ensure that we appreciate women's mental health? How are we going to ensure that we appreciate the impact that we need to nurture when we are dealing with issues of culture, issues of religion, issues of tradition. But then how do we really, as women that are sitting here in the Women 20, engage on issues of bridging the digital divide? We need to think through on the how. I think in this slide, I was just trying to pen out the realities of where we find how is that woman in the defense force going to ensure that if you have uniform, you will find uniform that will be of good color, that will not embarrass you as a woman when you are experiencing your most powerful time of the month. How are we going to be sensitive to women's issues at that level? But how do we then ensure that women in agriculture are empowered, women in the mining sector are empowered? And so, just to end off with a couple of recommendations. Yes, we can talk, but we really want our recommendations to find expression in one before, please, yes, that's the one. We want our recommendations to find expression in the declarations. So the first recommendation, if you're talking about your women in leadership, as we engage in this global space, in this multilateral space, can we have the power to engage international funding institutions to ensure progressive gender strategies that are socially and environmentally safeguarded? If you have your basic IFI, let's make an example of the World Bank or IMF or New Development Bank, whichever one suits us. An amazing project would take place in the heart of an African country. We're building a road that is going to be ensuring accessibility for business to thrive into the country. But in the process of building that road, we displace families. What impact, positive and negative, is that going to have on your ordinary women? And so can we in this space recommend to our leaders to ensure that when IFIs bring funding to our countries, there are clearly defined social and environmental safeguards in strategically progressive and transformative gender strategies? We might even move and say we want a gender specialist in the New Development Bank. We don't know. We might just do that as women. How do we then, in the second recommendation, how do we ensure that in the local sphere, when you're talking about your woman leader, in the local sphere, how do you ensure that you take that woman who's a community church leader, who knows what assets are in her community, and you develop asset-based community development plans in her lounge, in her bedroom, with 6 church leaders who will ensure this is digitalized and transformed to be in Farahdibha's recommendations as she leads our working group and our task team. Thirdly, can we have a recommendation that's going to say, create a threshold and say that you're going to, by 2030, ensure that Goal 5 is going to ensure that there's going to be reduced levels of gender inequality through gender equity, unapologetically feminist approaches to creating stepping stones for women to be able to get to where they need to be. Just in 2 minutes, I'd like to give, in fact, let me not even engage on these ones, on these next 2 recommendations, because my colleague has ensured that we're talking about remuneration of our care workers, women. We're talking about ensuring that social security standards in all our countries. And you know, we're not going to ensure that the leaders of our countries hold themselves accountable. What we need to do in these spaces is hold each other accountable. When we have a glass of coffee, a cup of coffee, when we have that conversation while we preparing for our task team sessions, ask your colleague, how far is your government going? How far are your policies? How progressive are your policies? And what are you doing to ensure that that entrepreneur is able to access funding? And lastly, women traditional leaders. You know, one of the things that's very close to my heart, now we can have the last slide, I'm done, I'll just say something. One thing that's close to my heart is how you get women who will be at the top of the range leadership, policy making, influential, but are unable to get anywhere because of our inability as women or unwillingness as women to say, that is our leader. Without competing with each other, because there's no need to compete with each other. We can push 5. Just like we've got strong women who started this whole thing in Italy, right? Just sorry, with Turkey, I beg your pardon. How do we get, you've got your Turkey, you've got your Indonesian, you've got your Indian women, you've got your South Africa coming up. Next year, we've got Brazil, we've got Italians, we've got, partner countries that are not part of the G20. How do we find pockets of women, strong women, 5, 6 women, and say, we shall put fire behind you and you will represent us? But we'll also hold you accountable. So what we need to do as women, we need to get to a point where we say, far and away with gender inequality, fire to gender equality and equity, but we are never at the same positioning as women. When you find a strong woman in a position of power and she can make influence, give fire to that woman. Yeah. And that is the only way those recommendations, even if they find expression in the declarations, will be implementable. So fire to you, sisters. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Give a round of applause. Such a powerful presentation. And we need to have women support women. All women are great. Yeah. Thank you so much, Sibu. And last but not least, I will have my friend over here, Miss Rimjhim Gour. You can have my 6 minutes, but it's really tight, so hopefully you will deliver in 6 minutes. Go ahead, the time is yours.
Thank you. Could we please have the first slide? Like the next slide, I mean, not the cover slide. Okay. So I'll start with this lady. She's Noor Jahan, a 55-year-old lady who has never been to school and lives in a village where electricity was a dream back then. Noor Jahan roughly translates to the light of the world in English, and manifesting the meaning of her name, Noor Jahan started making solar lamps and she started renting it out to her fellow village residents just at a bare minimum cost of $0.03 per day. Acknowledged by the Prime Minister himself, Noor Jahan is only reflective of the power of grassroots, the women at grassroots. While we talk and discuss sustainable development goals over here, women like Noor Jahan are already adapting and executing it at grassroots of India. We'll quickly go to the video where we will see a school go from sensitive borders of Kashmir. And what do they have to say about the situation of education over there? Could you please play the video? Not this one. Not this one. It's not this one, not this one. The third slide. Yeah. Not this one, the third slide.
Yeah.
We have to play the third slide. Yeah, this one. This one, yeah. Oh, I think it's mute from there. Okay, no worries. So I'll
पाते थे कि हम अपनी पढ़ाई मुकम्मल कर सके. अब हमें फ्री हॉस्टल भी दिए जाते हैं, फ्री गुज्जर हॉस्टल्स भी, और हमें स्कॉलरशिप भी दिया जाता है. हमारी पढ़ाई बहुत अच्छी जा रही है.
These are extremely conflicted areas where education has been a challenge. Women now, girls now, are provided with free women hostels, scholarships and whatnot, so that literacy has a last mile reach. Now, reflecting a little over there about education and literacy in India, could we come to the next slide? To every 100 primary male teachers, we have 105 female primary teachers in India. And the next slide is going to blow all our minds off, because according to global data, the female literacy in India stands at whopping 91.9% right now.
That's the power of grassroots once again. Shamika ji has already talked about our honorary volunteers like ASHA workers, Anganwadi workers, who play a pivotal role when it comes to executing health-related policies on ground. So here we establish one thing, that women are driving sustainable developmental goals and their execution in rural areas. At the same time, women are also playing pivotal role when it comes to primary education. Women have more than half of the administrative role to play when it comes to governance of smallest unit. And at the same time, when it comes to health, when we were under the lockdown, it were these women who were taking care of the ones quarantined. So women in a way are already driving the rural ecosystem in India and in other countries as well. And they have a huge potential. The question arises, where exactly is the scope to work? If you look at all the stories that we discussed right now, these women were reached out by someone, that someone explained them the impact of this entire awareness drive that they wanted to create. And after understanding, they beautifully executed it. And this is exactly where we all can be very pivotal. It's the key, as Sandhya Purecha ji also said, it's about collaboration, cooperation and communication. These women need guidance, something that you and I have access to and they don't. So what is the best way of reaching out to them? We have seen a hike of dramatic surge in the number of women who've come out, availed policies, beneficiary schemes over the last 8 years. And I will tell you what the reason is. Our Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister, runs a very interesting monthly series on pro-developmental issues called Man Ki Baat. And to give you just a glimpse of the magnitude of the penetration Man Ki Baat has, we'll see a very quick video again from the border areas of Kashmir, which did not even have access to internet back then.
ये अभियान पर्यावरण की सुरक्षा के साथ साथ शहर के सौंदर्यीकरण से भी जुड़ा है। इस मुहिम की खास बात यह भी है कि इसमें
So that's the place where even electricity didn't reach back then, but our Prime Minister was able to penetrate through the power of radio. Now the question comes, why radio? Because radio is it has 92% penetration in India. Secondly, the radio gives you a sense of unbiasedness because you do not see the face, you do not have your preconceived notions, so it becomes more trustworthy. Inspired by Prime Minister Modi and his historic drive, I call it historic because radio has existed for centuries. But it was first time in 60 years that one prime minister came and said, no, I'm going to tap into the truest potential of radio and I'm going to reach out to every one of those 1.3 billion people and make them aware of each initiative, each policy, each scheme that I'm trying to execute and make it a Jan Bhagidari, which is public participation. Taking inspiration and cue from him, we started GRAMYA. The idea of GRAMYA is to take a bottom-to-top approach and to digitize the entire experience of radio. We've built community radio across 13,000 Gram Panchayats and we pledge to go to 150,000 Gram Panchayats more over a period of next 1.5 years. The idea is very simple. You award the organizations, the sarpanches, the villages, the group of ASHA workers, self-help groups with their own radio, and they can use radio for three purposes. First is for peer-to-peer learning. You can enable the peer-to-peer learning using it. For example, a few days back we did a very interesting session where a group of two ASHA workers communities, they came together and they exchanged their best practices to fight malnutrition at grassroots. The second way is to give them a platform where they could give their feedback with respect to all government-related policies, give their suggestions, which could directly be relayed to the elected representative. This again correlates and goes back to the Jan Bhagidari, or the public's participation in building a very transparent ecosystem for governance. And the third is giving the act platform to those people, men and women at grassroots, who are making change, doing something extremely inspirational, but do not have a platform where someone can listen to them. So, what next? It's very easy. Collaborate with us. Collaborate with women next to you. Collaborate with that house help who works at your place. Just reach out to every woman who you think is less privileged than you, and try to handhold her, help her achieve her dreams. Learn through them, teach through them, and that's how we build a very astute and tight ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And once again, big respect to my 6 panelists. One more applause, please. Yes, who already delivered magnificent works and facts. I'm afraid I cannot facilitate Q&A sessions for this because the time is over and very tight. And I was just one paragraph that a lot of happening in the grassroots level already, driven by women. Hence, many challenges women face still, yeah? Let us do more and more, empower more and more women, because it is proven that women are the change maker. So we hope that our discussion will shed light on the importance of promoting gender equality in leadership positions and inspire action towards creating an enabling ecosystem for women leaders at the grassroots level. It is my honor to facilitate this session. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you once again for all 6 panelists, and I'm giving the floor to you. I'm Farahdibha. Thank you so much. Namaste.
Thank you everyone that's been part of this panel.